Hello and welcome to the Your Story, Our Fight podcast from Lupus, LA. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, and we'd like to thank GSK for their wonderful support of this program. Today, you are going to meet the person who has the distinction of coming to us from the furthest away we've ever done this show. Taping live from Cape Town, South Africa. I want to welcome Sagree Naiker. Sagree is a marvelous woman with a terrific inspirational story. She wrote a book we're going to talk about called The Show Must Go On. So already she's inextricably linked to Hollywood, which we love. And welcome, Sagree.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, we appreciate it. I know actually you just went through a lupus-related hospital ordeal. So I am very happy to have you with us and feeling better.
Thank you.
So tell us about, I know we've spoken before, and I know you were diagnosed with RA first and then into lupus. So tell me about sort of your early diagnosis. I also want to point out before we get started, so you have some context, that Sagree at the time of her diagnosis was working as a nurse in South Africa. And so I think there's a lot of interesting parts of your story that relate to being in the medical field. And then, so we're going to talk about all that. So tell me about your original diagnosis.
Okay. My original diagnosis was in October 2016. After much deliberation, after much confusion, should I rather say, because we know that autoimmune diseases are so complex in nature. I saw many doctors, and after some of the doctors thinking that this might be episodes of depression, because there isn't a direct test, blood test or investigation that's done where you can just directly be diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Because of its complexity, I went from doctor to doctor trying to find out what was wrong. And eventually, being a registered nurse in a hospital, I came into contact with one of the rheumatologists, and I spoke to her, and she asked that I should see her, and she diagnosed me with rheumatoid arthritis in 2016.
And then how did it progress to your lupus diagnosis?
A few years later, I found that the symptoms were not going into remission. Instead, it was getting worse. I started to lose my hair. I started to have some mouth ulcers, a lot of fatigue, just generalized malaise, difficulty to get up in the morning, just to get that get up and go feeling. And I found that it was difficult for me to do my job. I worked as a registered nurse in the ICU, which became really complicated because you really have a lot of tasks that are assigned to you, a lot of duties where one-on-one nursing. And I found that by about midday, I was unable to continue with my work because I was so fatigued. I also at that time experienced a lot of insomnia. So I would work a 12-hour shift and find that when I got home, I was tired enough to go to sleep, but never got any rest. So I would wake up the next day feeling absolutely exhausted. And when it was really the busiest time in the ICU, I found it became difficult for me to function. That's when I contacted my rheumatologist. I was hospitalized, and she suggested, let's do a lupus test, because there is a possibility you may have had it and just didn't know about it. And the test came back positive for lupus.
And so now you really went out on medical disability, and it really sort of changed your entire life.
Yes, it was absolutely devastating to not be able to nurse at a patient's bedside anymore. Being a nurse was what I was skilled to do. So for 16 years of my life, I nursed. It was my passion. It was everything I loved to do, loved working with people and serving others. And now I'm walking out of a career that is the only thing that I'm familiar with. So I left absolutely devastated, absolutely clueless as to what the future will hold now. And that's where I was placed on medical disability on a temporary basis, and there is obviously a protocol to follow, and eventually it fell into a permanent disability where I could not nurse anymore.
And so how did you cope with that, I think, sort of in those initial days and weeks? I mean, were you being treated so you started to feel better, or were you still at the same time you had to make this critical life decision, were you still really feeling the effects of your lupus?
I was really sick at the time when I was diagnosed with lupus. One of the most devastating things I experienced at that time was that I lost all of my hair.
Hmm.
So I was bald for the first time in my life, not having any hair, which was devastating as a woman. It was so difficult for me to deal with. In fact, I found myself being so depressed for about 2 weeks, not wanting to leave the house, not wanting to get out of bed, basically not wanting to answer for what has changed. Because we know that lupus is an invisible disease, and now suddenly it's manifesting externally. So people are starting
Hmm.
to notice, and a lot of people have this idea that the moment you lose your hair, you probably have cancer. And now I have lupus, and lupus is much more difficult to explain. I found myself staying at home for about 2 weeks, and then I found that my family was also not leaving the house and finding it difficult to get out there. And eventually I had to decide, you know what, it is what it is. I'm just gonna put on a hat. It was winter, thankfully, so I
Hmm.
could put on
Hmm.
a hat, different hats, and I left the house. And everyone thought I was just keeping warm because South Africa over winter is really icy cold, especially in Cape Town. And so no one really questioned about the hair. And after a while, I didn't sort of take notice of it. My hair grew back, not as perfectly as I would have envisioned, but I'm thankful for what it is. Uh,
Right.
so yes, I was battling many things at that time, lying in bed, crippled from lupus, together with the rheumatoid arthritis, which makes it much more complicated. And I was also dealing with the fact that I'm going on to disability at the age of 39. It was absolutely unthinkable. It was nothing I planned for my life. And that is where I had to search myself. And that is where I talk a lot about the fact that I cannot reiterate the power of a sound mind. Having to
Mhm.
win the battle in your mind so that physically you can go on with life every day. And that is basically a battle that went on for about a month until I got back to the fight.
And I know that I spoke at the beginning of the show about your book, The Show Must Go On. Show me your book. I want to see it. Do you have it next to you?
There you go.
There it is. Well, first of all, that's a huge accomplishment. So congratulations on that. So tell me about, because I know writing the book was really, I think, what pulled you from this depression and helped you really turn around your approach and your attitude and your health, really.
Yes, I was lying in bed. Like I said, I was crippled with lupus. So you can imagine for someone who's as busy as I am, especially coming from nursing, we are just on the go, just working all the time, and nursing requires a lot of standing. So you never in a relaxed mode. Now I'm lying in bed and I'm just staring at the ceiling, and I'm having this conversation with God because everyone's going on with their life. My kids are gone to university and school. My husband's gone to work. And here I am. My life has come to a grinding halt. And I am having this conversation with God, and I'm saying, surely there must be another purpose to me. In the natural, all I'm skilled to do is to nurse. But in my faith, I know that surely if God has shut one door, he will open another one. To think that I would have written a book still actually baffles me to date. It was never a dream of mine. It was never a passion of mine. it was definitely what God has gifted me to do. I just felt, and in that moment, lying there asking God, what is my purpose going forward? Surely there's something that I can do, that I can take this life journey and impact the lives of other people. And God gave me the vision to write. And I knew at that moment He placed in me a mandate that would go out there and change people's lives, transform lives, and just make a difference, however small it may be. Just to change one life, I think that would be the greatest achievement beyond nursing. Yeah.
Well, and I think, you speak about your faith, and I'm assuming that that was a big part of your life before your lupus diagnosis and really not only helped you come to the decision to write the book, but really was helping you get through this really difficult time.
To be honest with you, before I got sick with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, I was a Christian my entire life, but not the faithful type. If I can be honest,
I can understand that.
being in nursing, I would usually say a universal prayer on my drive to work in the mornings, just say hello to God. And I always felt that nursing was close to serving God in a way. And if I wasn't as good of a Christian as I needed to be, that should be more of a cover-up. After I got sick, and with lupus being so complex, you do tend to get to that point where you have no other choice but to drop to your knees. You become so desperate for somebody to understand you. And I just found that comfort in my faith. I always knew God was real. They always say that you never really appreciate what you have unless it's taken away. You're never really thankful for your health unless you're challenged there. And that's what I found. I found that I was now thanking God for things that in real time, whereas in the past, I wouldn't be so grateful. So we just, as human beings, we appreciate things in retrospect and not in real time. And that's what I found myself doing. And really, if anything, I have found with the lupus journey is that my faith has really gotten stronger. It's really carried me through some difficult times.
And in the book, tell me about sort of the journey of the book and how you sort of come to the premise of The Show Must Go On, which I think is really a terrific mantra for lupus patients, because I think that that's it captures exactly what so many of us really feel like. You just have to find a way, one way or the other, to go on with your life and accomplish things. So tell me kind of what's that? Is that the heart of the book, or is there some other messages that are going along with that?
The book is a culmination of my lupus story, the autoimmune diseases. It's about saying goodbye to a career that I was very well known to. And obviously, me finding my faith in the journey, finding God again, but this time on a more personal scale. The Show Must Go On is a no-holds-barred perspective of a daily struggle with lupus. I haven't held back on any of the emotions I felt every single day. It's the chapters that are unfolding are exactly how it had taken place in my life. So I talk about my hospitalizations. I talk about all of the new diagnoses I was facing. Being a registered nurse, I didn't always understand what lupus was. Now that I had it, I went and had to do some research. I had to find out what is going on with me. And to be honest with you, I still don't have all of the answers. Because we know that lupus is the great imitator. It mimics a lot of symptoms, and it really masquerades a lot of other illnesses. So I found The Show Must Go On is basically saying, hey, look, it gets complicated and it gets more and more complex as the days go by. But you know what? Whatever you face and whatever cross you are called to carry, the show must go on. So I'm basically putting out a message there that we all have a cross to bear. maybe not lupus, maybe something else. But I believe that we need to get up and move on. Like we spoke about in the beginning of this interview, that I was in hospital 3 weeks ago. I had emergency surgery. Just last week, I was in hospital. I was only discharged last week, actually. But you know what? You have those tough moments. You have those really difficult moments where only you can wake up from that. And as I spoke about the power of a sound mind, it's you making up your mind that, hey, I'm going to win this battle or I'm going to give up right here. And that's just something that you do within yourself. I'm just putting out a message to every lupus sufferer out there. The show must go on. Yes, you'll have a bad day today, but I always say this. I always say, if someone asks me how I'm doing, look, today's not a good day, but I really believe tomorrow will be better. And so that's basically my message out there.
It's super inspirational, and I think really sums up what a lot of lupus patients believe, or what some may need to hear. And I think that's great. Let me do this. I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and continue talking to Sagree about how the show is going on. And we'll be right back.
90% of lupus patients are women, and 1 in 3 are women of color. Lupus LA is focused on helping to address health disparities in the country that directly affect our patient population. For more information, visit lupusla.org.
Welcome back to the Your Story, Our Fight podcast from Lupus LA. We're back talking to Sagree Naiker about her book, The Show Must Go On, and about her lupus journey and story. And so tell me, once the book is out there, I know that's cathartic and I'm sure a huge accomplishment. What has been the response to the book? Well, first of all, I'll tell me where you can get the book, because I know that's what our listeners are saying right now is, Adam, you haven't told us where we can get the book. So tell us that, and we're going to put a link up as well, but tell us how you can get the book.
Okay, I have a website, www.theshowmustgoonbook.co.za. The book is available on Amazon as well, so you can find the book there.
Perfect. Okay, we'll put a link to that. But then tell me, so when the book was released, what's been, I guess, the most surprising aspect of it?
The book was done with just with creating awareness in mind, with making an impact in the lives of fellow autoimmune sufferers. But the real moment that was so astonishing for me was when I was given the opportunity to be on a morning show called Expresso in South Africa. And that was absolutely wonderful. To be able to create awareness on that platform was absolutely amazing. And the response we got was so amazing from the public, because lupus is not always recognized. They always discussed other health matters, and COVID being the focus, this pandemic being the focus at the moment. But because it was Lupus Awareness Month, and we had a chance to shed some light on lupus, I have a colleague, friend of mine, Dr. Emil Reed, who actually assisted me to get onto the show so that we could create awareness around lupus. So that was absolutely a fantastic moment for me. Never anticipating being on television, always being a behind the scenes girl. And now I've got this moment that is just so surreal, and really just God making a way for this to happen. So I was so thankful for that.
No, I saw that interview. It was excellent. And I'm sure Lupus LA actually has spoken to some of the lupus. I know there are some lupus groups in South Africa. We had a partnership with one many, many years ago. But what is the climate in South Africa in terms of rheumatology and lupus awareness? And, where do you think you stand there?
There isn't much awareness with regards to lupus. From what I heard from one of the support groups, there isn't even accurate data with regards to lupus. So lupus is still very much rare in South Africa. However, in recent days, we are seeing a lot more patients that are being diagnosed with lupus. So it is becoming a disease that we are becoming more and more familiar with. However, we still hope to find a cure for lupus. We still hope that there will be more awareness. I think financially in South Africa, we don't have much organizations that support lupus, lupus research and lupus awareness. But I think everyone in their small way is trying to make a difference by joining lupus support groups. We kind of set the stage, we kind of assist each other, support each other. Because I remember when I was first diagnosed, I went on some lupus support groups and I started to have a pretty good idea of the emotions I was feeling, the difficulties I was experiencing psychologically, just to find out that there is another person out there that is experiencing similar situations. It actually felt a lot better. It actually made a lot of sense. And I think that is my drive to come on these platforms and create awareness, because I know what a difference it makes to another individual, just to hear that there is someone else out there that's going through what I'm going through. So, and that is why I love what you guys do, this organization, Lupus LA, your story, our fight. Oh, that really touches me, because really it's my story, but it's all our fight. And that just screams empathy. It just screams support, and it screams really absolutely wanting to put out, our message out there for people to say, you know what, we really feel you and we understand what you're going through and you're not alone. And that's fantastic.
Well, you should do a commercial for us, because I think you're absolutely right. That was the intent of the Your Story, Our Fight. And I think if there's a silver lining to this pandemic, it's that we were sort of already headed in a digital direction, but COVID really forced Lupus LA to look into ourselves and say, well, we're not constricted by the borders of Los Angeles or California or even the United States. And I think, it's a testament to sort of how the world is changing, that you and I even found each other to get you on this podcast from, LA to South Africa. And I think we're finding so many people are coming to us either to our Facebook Live series or our digital support groups. We're doing all of these virtual support groups so people can join from anywhere in the world. And I actually think it's sent a message to people that you're not alone. Beyond even in your city or your town or your state, there are people all over the world dealing with these exact same issues. And I truly believe that there is strength in numbers. And, when the lupus world comes together globally, it has a huge impact. And I think it has a huge impact on doctors, on pharmaceutical companies, and people take notice. And I think that accelerates treatments and cures and research, frankly. So I appreciate you being a big part of that and showing us, proof positive that it works. And I know this podcast is going to reach a lot of people that may never have had access to your book or your story. And I think that's terrific. And I think I've been talking too much on my own podcast, but so tell me how it is now. How do you feel? I know you were just in the hospital, but how has your daily routine changed? And what's a typical day for you?
The typical day for me, I think like all lupus sufferers, getting out of the bed is the biggest challenge. Every day, just having that psyche to say, I need to get out of this bed. I think for me, that is the most important thing. Once my feet hit the ground, I know that I'm going to be okay. So what I found in recent times is that the exhaustion, the fatigue is becoming, much more. But I think just because the past 3 weeks have been difficult, This time I found to recover from surgery was much more difficult. It was much more complicated. I had post-op complications where I had to be hospitalized as an emergency in the middle of a pandemic. That is always a frightening thing for us because we are so much at risk, immunocompromised. And I think for me, going to theater this time and ending up in the hospital again, it was not so much the lupus, it was not so much what was going on, but it was more knowing at the back of my mind that we are in the middle of a pandemic and COVID is very much real. And there's a good chance of me being in the hospital that I could contract COVID. For me, that was the greatest thing I had to deal with mentally. I was not coping well with that. I often found myself asking my rheumatologist, why is it taking so long for me to get better this time? Because I am usually the person who fights really hard to get out of bed. I'm a typical nurse. I'm not a good patient. I would say if I was a nurse nursing me, I would say I'm non-compliant. So I try to get out of bed as soon as possible because there's always that fear that you might just end up in that mode of not wanting to get up. Because, with lupus, it's so much nicer to just rest. And it's so difficult to get up physically after having surgery, trying to recover from that. I found that this time it was really much more complicated. And what my doctor said was, you must understand that with lupus, your body experiences a lot of trauma and your body has a lot of, your inflammatory markers are higher, especially because you've had surgery. So you need to give yourself the time to heal and your body the time to recover. And for me, that was the biggest challenge in this, during this time.
No, I can imagine. So what's next for Sagree? What's next for The Show Must Go On?
The Show Must Go On has been delayed, negatively impacted due to the pandemic. A lot of things have been put on hold. So my mission, my aim is to get out there, to create more awareness, to get the book out there, because I really feel the book is going to transform lives. I really feel that people reading the book that are going through what I am going through and you are going through will really feel a connection to the point where they will find a lot of answers that they've been searching for. And I often feel when someone writes a memoir and you read a memoir, in as much as you're curious to know what the story is behind the face, you love the story, you relate and resonate with the story, but more than anything, the person that's reading the book wants to know, how did you survive what I'm going through right now? What did you do when you didn't feel like getting out of bed in the morning? Were there moments in your faith where you felt that you couldn't pray? Did that make you feel like a bad person? And you know what? The Show Must Go On answers all of that. And that is why I say it's a raw, no holds barred perspective on life with autoimmune diseases. It's a daily struggle. And when you read The Show Must Go On, you will find that there isn't 2 days that are alike. Every single day is different. And every single day you're just in suspense all the time because you never know what tomorrow holds. You never know what you're going to face tomorrow. What will the challenge be? Am I going to be hospitalized? What are my blood results going to reflect? Am I okay? Am I really okay? Or am I trying to be strong? And The Show Must Go On really, I know it's going to relate with the readers because I wrote it just directly from my heart. It's not a pretty book to read. A lot of the people that have read it, that have come back with responses from the book and reviews from the book have said to me, they were actually in tears reading the book because it actually related to them to such an extent where they felt, man, I was just waiting for someone out there to tell me that I'm not crazy. This is real.
Well, listen, I think what you just said in that last sentence is a terrific message. You are a sensational messenger And we're hoping we'll help you sell some books and change some lives. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, Sagree. We wish you good health, and thank you for your tireless efforts, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me. Thank you to all the listeners.
On behalf of the entire team at Lupus LA, we thank you for joining the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Please tune in, spread the word, and come back for more inspiring lupus stories. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, wishing you good health, and to always remember, your story is our fight.